You know that feeling, right? If you've ever tried to learn another language, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can read an article, you can even fire off an email, but the second you actually have to speak, your brain just hits the emergency brake. It's a super common frustration. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why speaking is so uniquely difficult and look at the total revolution in teaching that has changed everything.
All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to tackle why speaking feels so incredibly hard. Then, we'll deconstruct it with a really cool model called the Pyramid of Speech. From there, we'll dive into the huge shift from old school to new school teaching, check out the 5 big principles that guide modern learning, and wrap things up by asking, what's the real goal anyway?
So first things first, let's just get this out of the way. It's not you. Speaking really is that hard, and it all comes down to the intense pressure of having to perform in real time.
That brain freeze is the totally natural response to the massive cognitive load of the moment. I mean, think about it. The person you're talking to is right there, waiting. There's no pause button, there's no backspace key, it's all happening now.
And this comparison just lays it all out, doesn't it? The source material makes it clear. Speaking is instantaneous, it's temporary, you need immediate feedback, and you have virtually zero time to plan or edit your thoughts. Writing, on the other hand, that's your safe space. It's permanent. You can plan, you can draft, you can revise a dozen times. This right here is why someone can seem like a poet in an email, but can barely string a sentence together face to face.
So let's move on and really peel back the layers on this whole act of talking, because it's not one single skill. Oh no, it's a whole stack of skills all firing at once at lightning speed. Okay, so what is your brain actually doing when you try to speak? This pyramid is a fantastic way to visualize it. Just think of it as layers of complexity, starting with the big picture of a whole conversation at the bottom and getting more and more precise until you reach the tiniest little sounds at the top. So let's start from the bottom and work our way up. Down at the base, we have what are called utterances. And an utterance is, quite simply, something someone says. The most important thing to get here is that it does not have to be a perfect, grammatically correct sentence from a textbook. If you and a friend are trying to figure out dinner, you don't say, "I would like to propose that we consume pizza for our evening meal." You just say, "Pizza?" And that's it. That's a real utterance. It's the true foundation of how we talk.
All right, moving up a level from these simple utterances, we get to the actual Lego bricks of language, morphemes. These are the smallest little chunks that have meaning. So the word hat is a morpheme. You can use it all by itself. But the S in hats is also a morpheme. It can't stand alone, but adding it completely changes the meaning. And your brain has to track all of these tiny but critical pieces in the middle of a fast-moving conversation.
And finally, we get to the very, very peak of the pyramid, the most precise element of all, phonemes. These are the smallest units of sound that can change the meaning of a word. Think about this for a second. The tiny little puff of air that makes a P sound different from a B sound is the only thing that separates pit from bit. If you get that one microscopic sound wrong, the entire meaning just falls apart. Your brain is a world-class acrobat, juggling this entire pyramid in real time. It's incredible.
Now that we see just how incredibly complex speaking is, it's probably no surprise that our whole approach to teaching it has been completely turned on its head.
For a long, long time, this is what a language class sounded like. This is a perfect example of the old audiolingual method. The game was simple. Listen and repeat. The whole point was to perfectly recite these memorized lines, hoping they'd magically turn into a habit.
The theory behind all this was something called behaviorism, the idea that language is just a set of habits, like tying your shoes. The goal was to drill those habits into your brain and to avoid making mistakes at all costs. The obvious problem? Real life isn't a script. Real conversation is messy and spontaneous. And let's be real, Maria is almost never actually going to the library.
Okay, now compare that old school drill to this. This is a real transcript from a more modern classroom. I mean, it's messy, it's a little chaotic, it's definitely not perfect. But look closer. What's actually happening here? Students are trying to figure something out, together. They are actually communicating.
This messy, chaotic, but very real exchange is at the heart of a massive shift called communicative language teaching. And it's based on a pretty revolutionary idea. We had it completely backwards. You don't learn all the grammar rules and vocabulary lists first, and then try to build a conversation. No, you learn the grammar and the vocabulary by trying to have the conversation. Interaction isn't the finish line, it's the engine that powers the whole journey.
So, what does this new school approach actually look like when the rubber meets the road?
Well, it pretty much boils down to 5 core principles that any modern language learner or teacher should know.
Let's just run through these, because they're really key. First, context is everything. Learning Spanish in Ohio is totally different from learning it in Madrid. Second, you have to balance fluency and accuracy. This is huge. You need time to just talk and get your ideas out, mistakes and all. But you also need focused time to clean up those mistakes. Third, maximize student talk time. Simple rule, the student should be talking way more than the teacher. Fourth, negotiate for meaning. This means setting up activities where students have to genuinely work to understand each other to get something done. And finally, practice real-world talk. You need to practice both casual chit-chat and goal-oriented stuff, like, ordering a coffee or asking for directions.
And all of this whole evolution, leads us to a really big, final question about what we're even trying to do when we learn to speak a new language.
Because when you really think about it, the goal isn't just to speak, to spit out perfect sentences like a robot. The real human goal is to converse. And the absolute magic of a real conversation is that it's unpredictable. No single person controls where it goes. It's like a creative dance between 2 or more people.
So I guess it all comes down to this. The old way of teaching, with all its drills and perfect scripts, taught us to perform a language. The new way understands that the real, messy, beautiful goal isn't performance, it's connection. It's about being able to join in that spontaneous, unpredictable, and deeply human dance of a real conversation. And learning how to do that, well, that's a goal worth struggling for.